As I was pondering what to share today, I asked the Lord, what do you want people to hear? And it came to my mind, well, what do you need to hear? So I searched my heart and I prepared a sermon for me. So this sermon's my sermon to me, but I decided I'd let you listen in. So you can listen to the message God has for me. And I hope that you gain a blessing from it. But if not, understand that it's for me. 1 Timothy chapter 6 is our starting text that we're going to start with and consider. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 3 to 8. The topic actually that we're going to be covering is about contentment and patience. Because contentment and patience go hand in hand. If you're not patient, you can't be content. And if we're not content, then can we be patient? No, we can't. And patience is a vital key for the last days. Here are the patience of the saints, is the description of God's people in the last days. And if we desire to be those people, we must have this patience and also contentment. 1 Timothy chapter 6, and starting in verse 3, it tells us, "If any man teach otherwise, and consent not to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and to the doctrine which is according to godliness, he is proud, knowing nothing, but doting about questions and strives about words, whereof cometh envy, strife, railings, evil surmisings, perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds, and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is godliness. From such withdraw thyself." So here the apostle is speaking of a realm of people in the church, in fact, teaching. And the teaching was obviously religious teaching, but it didn't. It produced the opposite result. And so the apostle's warning of a certain teaching which doesn't use wholesome words, and there's always fighting about questions and words, and all it actually does is create envy and strife and division. Can you recognize that in Christendom? And this perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds are actually destitute of the truth. Because the truth, as it is in Jesus, is to produce two things, among many other things, two things, and that is contentment and patience. Because here, these people suppose that gain is godliness. But, in verse 6, "But godliness with contentment is great gain." So it's on the flip side. Gain to win an argument, to build up a church, or to have a worldly successful enterprise, people say is godliness. If you're going to have the blessing of God, you've got to go forward, and unless your church isn't growing, God's not blessing you, and all this human mentality that comes through is a result of not having the truth. Contentment with godliness is great gain. When we're uncontent, that means we're longing for something, and it is in the bosom of every human being to desire something better than they have. And indeed, as sinners, we need to desire something better than we have. But it says contentment with what? Godliness, not just contentment. Don't be content in your sins. Don't be content for something less than what God wants for you. But contentment with godliness, that combination is great gain. Jesus says, "Blessed are they that hunger and thirst." If you're hungry and thirsty, are you content? No. You have an appetite, you have a need, an internal need for life, food, water. But the blessing is, blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness. This world is hungry. Everyone is hungry, everyone is thirsty. Doesn't mean they're all blessed. Blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Now, if you're full, are you content? You've had a meal, your guest serves you, and put out the food, and you've eaten, and then the guest asks you, are you content now? In other words, has your appetite, your desires, your internal needs been supplied? If they have been supplied, then you have a sense of satisfaction, a sense of contentment, which comes a sense of peace and gives you the ability to be patient. If a child hasn't had enough water through the day, they become very irritable. And if the mother hasn't had enough water for the day, she becomes irritable. Just the need for water can give you that contentment to have enough water can give you more patience than you have if you were thirsty. And you translate that into emotional needs and every other need that we have. All our needs have to be supplied for us to be content. And praise God, there is a promise in the Bible that says He will supply all our needs in Jesus Christ. Through Jesus Christ. All our needs will be supplied. And so we can have contentment, which is involved in having our needs supplied, being filled with righteousness, hungry and thirsty. Blessed are you if you're in the state of needing it. The promise is you will be filled with it and become content. And if you're content with that righteousness that fills you, then you have two things. You have contentment and you have godliness, which equates to great gain. There are two evils in this world that the Bible talks about, and that is in Jeremiah 2 and verse 13. Please open your Bibles to Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse 13. Here, the prophet is speaking to God's people, and he has something against them. Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse 13, it reads, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." Two problems. One is that we are not going to God. Who? God to supply our need. In other words, we have forsaken that living water. And if you have forsaken the water, then what do you get? Thirsty. And if you're thirsty, what are you going to start doing? You're going to start looking for water. But the second evil was that they didn't return back to God, the fountain of living water. They went and hewed out cisterns. You know what a cistern is? A cistern is a container that holds water. On your toilet, there's a cistern that you press the button and that water that's held goes through. That's called a cistern. Something to hold water. And so what they did, they forsook God, the fountain of living water. You become thirsty, you have your needs are not met, and then you'll go and make up containers that actually leak. So it essentially equates like this, that we leave God, we don't really see that God supplies our needs, so we start looking somewhere else for our needs. And then we find something, and for a time it holds water. It's got a leak, it doesn't leak out all at once. And so there is a sense, this is nice. This is what I want. Give it time, and what happens? It empties. It empties, and then now, that thing that you found satisfaction in, you no longer find satisfaction. Have you experienced that? You go in your life, I want to be happier. Okay, fair enough. Everyone wants to be happier. Okay, so if I pursue this scenario, this circumstance, this object, this relationship, whatever it is, then that will then make me happy. And for a time it may. Give it time. And then all of a sudden, I'm still hungry. I'm still thirsty. You eat a meal, you're happy. Does it stay full? Do you stay full? No. And so it is with the world, that the elements of the world cannot satisfy us continually. You cannot be content in this world with its supply. I read a statement from Desire of Ages. And Jesus came to the Feast of Tabernacles. And the Feast of Tabernacles was a very pompous feast, celebration after the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles, and there was a lot of music and lots of things. You read the chapter of the Desire of Ages at the Feast of Tabernacles, and you'll see how thrilling it was. And as Jesus went there, while ever he saw all the dazzling lights and all the social activity and the music playing and all the ceremony and the wonderful experiences people had, he saw that the people were not actually being fed. You might experience this if you've ever been to a modern camp meeting in these days, where there's a lot of music and a lot of social activity and a lot of entertainment. But what is the deep soul need? Has it been filled? No. And so you're bombarded with all this. You don't have time to be sad because you've got people to talk to, you've got things to do, you've got things to listen to. But really, if you actually analyze your life, you're actually not being filled at all. And so you come away from such experiences drained. This is what happened at the Feast of Tabernacles in the time of Jesus. And as he went there, on the last day of the feast, do you remember what he said? Do you remember what he said? It's Desire of Ages 453. It says, day after day he taught the people until the last, the great day of the feast. The morning of this day found the people wearied from the long season of festivity. Suddenly Jesus lifted up his voice in tones that rang through the courts of the temple. If any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believeth on me, as the scripture hath said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. The condition of the people made the appeal very forcible. They had been engaged in a continual scene of pomp and festivity. Their eyes had been dazzled with the light and colour, and their ears wrangled with the richest music. But there had been nothing in all this round of ceremonies to meet the wants of the Spirit. Nothing to satisfy the thirst of the soul for that which perishes not. Jesus invited them to come and drink of the fountain of life, of that which would be in them a well of water springing up into everlasting life. The next paragraph after, it says, jumping one paragraph down, Jesus knew the wants of the soul. Pomp, riches, honor cannot satisfy the heart. Can't do it. If any man thirst, let him come unto me. The rich, the poor, the high, the low are alike welcome. The promises to relieve the burdened mind, to comfort the sorrowing, and to give hope to the despondent. Many of those who heard Jesus were mourners over disappointed hopes. What is a disappointed hope? Where you've thought, this object, this relationship, this thing that I want will then actually make me happy. I have hope in this. And then we pursue it in our life, we take it, whatever scenario that may be in your particular life, and then you'll find out, this isn't doing it. And that hope you once have becomes a disappointed hope. And many of the people in the time of Jesus were mourners over disappointed hopes. Many were nourishing a secret grief. Many were seeking to satisfy their restless longing with the things of this world and the praises of men. But when all was gained, they found that they had toiled only to reach a broken cistern, from which they could not quench their thirst. It's interesting when I read this chapter that Jesus is actually speaking to his religious people. Maybe the Philistines should have this problem. You know, worshipping their Dagon god and all the other gods that they had. Sure, that should be broken cisterns. But should Israel be experiencing this? Of all people on the planet, maybe the Babylonians with their city, when that came down, that was a disappointed hope. This well-fortified city that no one should actually be able to overthrow was taken by the Medes and Persians. Wouldn't that disappoint you? Sure. But God's people? Should God's people have these experiences? You know what it tells me? It tells me of a story. It reminds me of a story that Jesus told about two sons. Two sons. One son wanted to spend his inheritance. And so he said to his father, "Give me everything that I have and let me go." And this son obviously saw some benefit outside the father's care. And as he went, he pursued what he thought would make him happier. Did it make him happier? Was it a broken cistern? Yes. And so he realizes he's in the pig pen, eating pig's food, and thinking, man, my father's servants get treated better than this, and I'm the son of the king, and this is how I'm living. And so he thinks about this, that I have pursued all what I thought was going to make me happy and actually didn't. Now I think that I was actually better off with my father. So he returns. Now there was another brother who didn't leave. Did he have the same experience? He didn't, but did he have a broken cistern too? He did. He was in his father's house and he had a broken cistern. The prodigal son had to go out and he had a broken cistern. How many people in God's own house have broken cisterns? How do we know he had a broken cistern? Well, the story goes that when the father saw his prodigal son come back, he was so happy that he killed the fatted calf, and he made merry and he called his friends, and they had a celebration that the prodigal son had come back. And the other son, who was always with him, wasn't content. In fact, was jealous. And said, I have been with you. I haven't left this house. You haven't even given me a kid to make merry with my friends. You've never given me this and that, and this person who's gone and wrecked his life, come back, and now he gets all these blessings, and I've been in your house for so long, and you haven't given me these things. Do you know what the father said to him? Everything. He says to his son, everything that I have is yours. You have the well of water right here, but you just don't even know how to use it. And so it is with God's people. That we can be right under the nose of God and still be having needs not met. How can this be? Everything that God has is ours. And so I want you to ponder about this, that if you have a sense of being not content, if you have a sense of hunger, you've got an appetite for something, you're wanting something that will make you happier than you are, then you must ponder, have I actually got that gift from God yet? Have I actually gone to him and said, look, Father, I want the kid to make merry with my friends now? Because he says, everything I have is yours. He just didn't know how to get hold of those treasures that the Father had already given him. so many years with the Father and he didn't know how to access those amazing gifts that satisfy us. Jesus was walking along with his disciples and he was hungry. He was thirsty. He had a need. And so he came by one of the wells, Jacob's well in fact, and there was a lady there. The disciples were sent off to go and get food because he was hungry. And he asked this lady, "Can you draw down and get me some water?" Jesus was thirsty. And as this request startled this lady, because she was a Samaritan, he was a Jew, he was a man, she was a woman, not meant to talk to each other, she gets startled. And Jesus understands that this lady actually has a greater thirst than he does. He's wanting water because his mouth is dry. But she has a deep need in her life. I invite you to turn to John chapter 4. Let's read part of this story. And notice what Jesus says to this lady. In John chapter 4. In verse 5, John chapter 4 and verse 5, "Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, which near the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour." Middle of the day. Midday. "There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, ask drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith unto thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked him of him, and he would have given thee living water. The woman said unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. For whence then hast thou living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself and his children and his cattle? And Jesus said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again, but whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman said unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Jesus said unto her, Go, call thy husband, and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou hast is not thy husband? In that thou sayest truly. The woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Here Jesus is dealing with a woman who obviously was thirsty. How many husbands did she have? Had? 5. She was thirsty for a relationship, something to satisfy the heart. She gets her first husband. Why did she get a second? What happened? Was her first husband a broken cistern? Yes. So then, the second one will be better. Second one. So she gets her second one. And what's her second husband like? He's a broken cistern. Okay. 2. I'm sure the third one will be better. She gets another husband, third husband. This time I'm more experienced. I know what I'm looking for. I know what to dodge. Third husband, what is he? He's a broken cistern. Okay, fourth. Surely there's more fish in the sea that are good. Fourth husband, broken cistern. Now what else is there? Maybe I should be alone. I can't handle that. Maybe try a fifth. Fifth husband turns out to be a broken cistern. And now she's entering into her sixth relationship. And she meets Jesus. And Jesus knows exactly he knew. And he's thirsty, but don't worry about this water we're drinking. We have a need right here. This woman has an appetite. She's thirsty, not for righteousness at this point. She's thirsty for human things that she believes will satisfy the longing heart. Disappointment after disappointment. And Jesus comes to her after she knows full well that she will be thirsty again. And so Jesus brings this point up and she says, I want the water you've got. And so as he talks about this water, he touches directly all her broken cisterns. And it's interesting, she just wanted to dodge the conversation. The next verse, she starts talking about the argument between the Jews and the Samaritans. Clearly off topic. Because she doesn't want to talk about her past. She doesn't want dug up all the relationships she's had. But she knows that Jesus is onto something. So Jesus lets her take the conversation off track. So they talk about which is the right church. Who's the right church? Who's God's church? Is it the Samaritans or the Jews? Which this is an argument that's even held today amongst people. Who's God's church? And Jesus will say, neither in that mountain nor in the other one. The hour will come, and now is, that the Father is seeking those to worship Him in spirit and in truth. The Jews had salvation, but what was their Feast of Tabernacles like? Were they thirsty too? Yes, they were. The Samaritans, their temple had been destroyed by their enemies. Did they have a broken cistern in their religion? Yes, they did. Because both the Jewish religion and the religion of the Samaritans, all the people still had broken cisterns. And so Jesus challenges them to worship God in spirit and in truth. Verse 25, the woman said unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. Jesus said unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. That person who you're actually waiting for, that is the desire of ages, the desire of nations, according to the prophets, is right here. You're wanting water. You've had this relationship, that relationship, another relationship with this man and the other man. And the desire of ages is right here, sitting next to you. Now he pulls the topic back on track. And then she goes to the city and tells the whole city, I have found a man who has told me all my past. Now, that's a challenging thing to say in the town that everyone knew her. They thought, wow, what is it? You've had 5, 6 relationships, and now you found a man who knows your past. Wouldn't he be running away from you? Is that how they received it? No, here is somebody who actually can deal with all the broken hurts that have ever been had. And so Jesus invites, through this lady, the invitation came to take of this water of life, that satisfying draught that Jesus gave. And the disciples came back, and Jesus says, well, I'm not hungry or thirsty anymore, because my meat, my satisfaction is not even in earthly food or water. It's actually in doing God's will. And as I reflected on these things, it was challenging. I thought, we need this. We need to be wrapped up with God's will. Because if we will put our entire will on the side of God's will, we will be satisfied in a way that we haven't experienced yet. Now you might think, what's God's will? Well, God's will is don't do this and don't do that and all these do's and don'ts. Do you want me to tell you what one of God's main will is? The salvation of other people. And that means that if I put my entire will in doing God's will, in seeking and saving that which is lost, I'll have a satisfaction that can come in no other way. Because when we give in ministry, it will be given back to us. This satisfaction is so essential to have patience. The 2 topics we wanted to cover today was contentment and patience. This invitation that Jesus gave for the water, he gave in Revelation to the people at the end. Revelation chapter 19. Revelation chapter 19. Oh, maybe I wrote it down wrong. Oh, 22. Sorry, yes, 22:17. Oh, 19, 17, yeah. 22:17, sorry for that. Revelation 22 verse 17. And the Spirit and the bride say, come. Let him that heareth say, come. And let him that is athirst come. And whosoever will, let him take of the water of life freely. Isn't that what Jesus said at the Feast of Tabernacles? And again, are we not in the Day of Atonement? And what's coming? The Feast of Tabernacles. And this invitation is ringing today. If you're thirsty, come. To the last generation, the people at the end of the world, is given the same that was given to the Jews. Are we tired of all the pomp and ceremony of our day and age? All the glittering lights and the banging music and everything that stimulates the brain? And aren't we just needing some spiritual refreshment? This thirst, this water of life, when it is experienced, causes a refreshment. It's none other than the refreshing that comes from the presence of the Lord. It's none other than the latter rain. When you are totally satisfied with Jesus, this has to be before you can have, here are the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Can you see that this element of being content, internal contentment, satisfaction, must be achieved. And if we're thirsty, don't bother looking into the world. Oh yeah, we're tempted. We think, yeah, well, if I had that, I would be happier. No, we won't. How do we know? Look at the past. I mean, how many husbands do you want? 6? It's not going to work. Every human being is a broken cistern. Every object on this planet is a broken cistern. Just believe it. Don't have to try. I mean, you can be like Solomon and try everything under the sun and then work it out when you're about to die and realize you messed your life up and think, okay, all is vanity. Or you can just say, well, all is vanity. Better option. Obedience is better than sacrifice. To hearken than the fat of rams. Why go through hell and back to work it out? You don't have to. The invitation is here. You have a need. If you have something that makes you uncontent, that I'm restless, I'm needing something, then we need to ask for the water. And if you're a child of God and you ask your Heavenly Father for water, will He give you water? He will. Do you think He might not? Do you slightly doubt that He wouldn't give you water? Oh, in an earthly sense, if our child asks for a cup of water, you can't deny that. What does it say that if you denied a little child a cup of water, what would happen in the New Testament? It's better than a stone was put around your neck and you were thrown into the depths of the sea. Better than you weren't born. If you deny someone water. And will God then deny you water after saying that? If God denied us water, then according to His word, He needs to put something around His neck and throw into the ocean. That's according to His word. He won't. We need to believe Him. That when we are thirsty and say, Lord, I'm restless. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I have an aching void in my life. Please fill it. Believe it. He will. And so this comes to patience, because until this is achieved, we will never achieve patience. And when we talk about love is primary ingredient in love is actually patience. Do you believe that? Turn with me to 1 Corinthians 13 and have a look at the description of love here, charity, as the King James puts it, agape love, divine love, not earthly love. 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13. And starting in verse 4, charity suffers long. What is that called? Patience. That's called patience. And is kind. Charity envieth not, charity vaunts not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, speaketh not her own, is not, what? What's that called? If you're a patient person, can you be provoked easily? No, that's number 2. Thinketh no evil, rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, beareth all things. What's that called? Patience. Believeth all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. What's that called? Patience. How many times has patience been used in one word or another? 4 times. It's the most prominent element in love. Is patience. In other words, if you can actually get hold of being patient in your life, you've gained a large percentage of the love of Christ. A large percentage. And you cannot be patient. Understand this, you cannot be patient while you're not content. While you have a need and you'll be restless trying for this thing and trying for that thing, and if someone cuts you, if you put your trust in humanity that they're going to supply your needs, some person, and they don't, do you become what? You become impatient with them. You're not giving me what I need. If you're pursuing an object and somebody is taking that object off you, what do you become? Impatient with them. You cannot be patient while you are not content. First step for being patient is get contentment with godliness. That is a great gain when we're talking about patience. Now, getting patience requires a couple of other things, and if you take these things separately and you understand them, these elements that we're going to talk about, first is contentment, we're going to talk about some other ones, combined are the ingredients, are the building blocks for divine patience. And so, let us turn to 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Second Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse 5, we read this, "And the Lord direct your hearts into the" what? "Into the love of God and into the patient waiting for Christ." There is a path. We have to make an experience individually. And that is to be directed into the experience of the love of God. And then he adds this, the patient waiting for Christ. I mean, isn't that included in love? Isn't that the 4 elements of love? Four mentions of love in 1 Corinthians? Suffers long, bears all things, endures all things, is not easily provoked. That's love. So he says, direct your heart into the love of God, and then he has to add in patience anyway. And the patient waiting for Christ. Because there's something about patience that we will need to keep us sane in the time of trouble. Romans 12 verse 12. I love this text. Marcus does too. Romans 12 verse 12. It says, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer. Can you see an element that is required in patience here? Rejoicing in hope. What do you need? You need to actually have joy. Do you know you can't be patient if you're not happy? We have to have joy. And how do you have joy? Well, the joy is actually in hope. Hope that you have is not hope. So you've got to be happy about something you don't have. Does that make sense? Rejoicing in hope. Now that might sound strange. You've got to be happy in something I don't have. Well, Jesus had it for the joy that was set before him. He then what? He endured the cross. So there is some future element that must become our hope. And that future element may not be recognized at the moment. So in other words, if you look at yourself and your circumstance, you might say, look, I am not in the most perfect scenario. I have to admit that. But because of the future hope, it can give you present joy. So that joy is not circumstantial. It's based on something in the future, something that is promised, something that will be had, but you have to believe it. So it's a combination of the exercise of pure belief with the innermost part of your heart on what God has told you will happen, and then a happiness in that future event which will take place. That is the recipe for being patient in tribulation. If you don't have that combination, if firstly you don't have true belief in the future state, in what God will do to you, if you don't truly believe that, you cannot really have joy in it. And if you don't have joy in it, you cannot be patient in your trials. You just can't. You just can't do it. And so, we're talking about contentment with godliness. Joy in future hope are the ingredients that make the patient cake. They need to be combined together. And another one is trust. You cannot be patient if you don't trust God. Look at James chapter 5 and verse 11. James chapter 5 and verse 11. James chapter 5 and verse 11. Behold, we count them happy which endure. So we're talking about the trial, being patient in it, being happy in it, being content. Behold, we count them happy which endure. You've heard of the, what? Patience of who? Of Job. And they've seen the end of the Lord. By the way, when it says you've seen the end of the Lord, that does not mean that the Lord has now ended, that the Lord doesn't exist. There's a Bible text in the Bible that says that Christ is the end of the law. Have you ever heard that text? Christ is the end of the law. And people have concluded that that means that because Christ has come, now the law is ended. But if you'd read it that way, that text, then you'd have to read that because of the patience of Job, God has now ended. You have seen the end of the Lord. So I just wanted to bring that in because people totally misunderstand the fact that the word end is the purpose, not the ceasing of existence of. So Christ is the purpose of the law. In other words, the Ten Commandments is to really actually produce Christ. That's the purpose of it. And Job's patience is the purpose of God. God purposes for you to have as much patience as Job has had. That is the purpose of God in his whole endeavor to come down and save you and me. So, we count them happy which endure. You have heard the patience of Job and seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. So we talk about the patience of Job. What did Job have when it came to God? Did he have trust? How big was his trust? What did he say? Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Can you trust someone you don't know? Some stranger comes up and says, give me your credit card, just trust me. Would you do it? No. I was going to say maybe your spouse might, but some people don't trust their spouse either with their credit card. So I won't say that. You can't trust someone you don't know. So the ingredients of patience here, so far we've said, the ingredients of patience is contentment, the refreshment from God. Joy in the future through the gospel. And trusting. And trusting cannot be had unless you know them. So these three ingredients, trust, contentment, and joy, are the three ingredients that make someone patient. You have all three, you will have patience. But you've got to know God. And that's why he says, this is eternal life, that you might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom thou hast sent. The knowledge of God is essential for you to have patience. Unless you have the correct knowledge of God, you will falter. You will not be able to say, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And so I want you to turn to another text. This text is, I believe, worth memorizing. Haven't memorized it yet, but I believe it is worth it. And maybe I'll do that. Colossians chapter 1. And here we get to see the will of God. What actually he wants to achieve in us. And it's very comforting when we see this in Colossians chapter 1 and verse 9. Colossians chapter 1 and verse 9 through to 11. 9 through to 11. For this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you, and to desire that you might be filled with the knowledge of His will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work, and increasing in what? In the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might according to His glorious power, unto all patience and long-suffering with joyfulness. As in, this is the result of your knowledge of God, of your wisdom, of your spiritual understanding, of God's power, is to make you a patient person. It's not to turn you out to be a Pharisee who gets irritated with every person who disobeys. That's not the purpose that God has of knowing Him. The knowledge of Him, the spiritual understanding, the wisdom, being fruitful in every good work, is to be unto, the result of, unto all patience and long suffering with joyfulness. What's that called? If you're suffering but you're happy, you're content. You're full up. You've been satisfied with that water of life. So what this text is propounding to us is that if we aren't gaining joy in our trials, we're still missing something. Don't despair, because when we realize we're missing something, we have a need. And blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. If you've realized, hang on, I am not at this condition yet, then God has a blessing for you. But be it known that this is the primary reason for all religious exercises in the knowledge of God. It's not to have an argument down the road with some other church who's, are we God's church, or is that God's church, or are they worshipping Samaria? Are they the right people, or is it the Jews? Or that's not the purpose of religion. The purpose of religion is to make a patient, long-suffering, joyful person. That's what it's all about. Now I want to close with a text in the book of Luke, and this will bring to mind why it is so essential that there is the patience of the saints at the end. Why it is the actual purpose of God. God knows how to deliver His people, the godly, out of temptation. He knows how it's to work, how we're to be delivered in the time of trouble such as never was. He knows how, and that how is through patience. It's not a magical thing that He would just put some bubble around everyone where everything's rosy for people. We go through a real disappointing world. And God has never in the Bible ever said that He'll take all disappointments out of the way. It doesn't exist in the Bible. But He says, I'll give you patience and joy. Read with me in Luke 21 and verse 16. Think of this in regards to disappointment. If you ever want to be disappointed, think of this. But notice what the Bible is saying. Luke 21 and verse 16. We're going to close with this text. Our time is gone. Luke 21 verse 16. And ye shall be betrayed. How would you feel if you're betrayed? Disappointed hope? Had hope in someone, they'd betray you. You'll be betrayed by your enemies? No, by your parents. Both by parents and brethren. Broken cisterns? Oh, they'll be broken cisterns. Mankind is a broken cistern. Your parent, your brethren, your spouse, doesn't matter. You'll be disappointed. Ye shall be betrayed by both parents and brethren and kinsfolk and friends. And some of you shall they cause to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But there shall not an hair of your head perish. What does verse 19 say? In your patience possess ye your souls. What does the word possess mean? It means to take hold of, or to hold together. If your parent or your brother in the church or your friend in the church or your kinsfolk went and betrayed you, that you were to be killed, would you feel like mentally falling apart? What's going to hold you together? Oh, your patience will hold you together. That's what it says. In your patience possess ye your souls. When you'll be hated of all men, nobody likes you. Everybody hates you. And you want to fall apart because essentially we are social beings, and if that happened to us, we have emotional needs. I mean, we need love. But if we're getting it from mankind, it will break. And so what we need to get it from God. The water of life, that satisfying, refreshing water that fills me up, that makes me content, that nobody can take away. That will make me patient with others. And when I'm patient, I will be sane when I'm betrayed. And there's a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Can you see why it was so important that the angel says, here are they, here is the patience of the saints, here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. This is the class of people who will survive. The 144,000. I mean, God could have said, here is the love of the saints. But he wants to actually say, love has an important role of patience in it, but patience is so important for survival in these last days. And so just to recap, summary. You can't be patient unless you're content. You can't truly be content unless you have a cistern that doesn't leak. And there is only one, and that is Jesus Christ. Just believe us. Believe the Bible. No, you don't have to believe me. Believe the Bible. Believe the woman who had 5, 10, 6 husbands. I can't remember how many. 6 people. Believe her that she was thirsty. There is only one desire of nations. It's Jesus. You want to be content? You need Jesus. In an internal way that perhaps you haven't had. Maybe you've been in his house and you thought, I haven't even had the little goat to have fun with my friends. Because everything God has is yours. And maybe you not have realized that yet. Or maybe you haven't worked out how to get it yet. Make that your occupation in the next few months, working out how to get it. Once you get content, you can be joyous in the future. It doesn't appear what you will be now, but you know that when he comes, you will be like him. For you shall see him as he is. Let that make you happy now. Don't wait. When Jesus comes, it will be such a happy day. Well, today can be a happy day because Jesus will come. You can have the happy day now. And that happiness will be amidst trials. And then when you get to know the character of God and you can trust him implicitly, and though he slay you, yet you'll trust him, then you'll have patience that will hold you mentally together through the time of trouble. I pray that we can obtain this. This was a message for me. I hope you got a blessing. May God bless us all. Amen.